Welcome to the major storylines from week one episode. Little bit of cause for panic here already in week one. Usually it's not time to panic in week one, but the Cowboys have a pretty unique situation on their hands right now. Caleb, what are you doing if you're the Cowboys?
I mean, I think if you're the Cowboys as an organization, you got to go look to get a quarterback. I don't think anyone thinks Cooper Rush is the answer. Um, but aside from that, I think what's really worrying for fantasy owners is CeeDee Lamb. He's a pretty popular pick to slot into that wide receiver one position on a lot of teams, especially if you went running back with your first two picks. He was probably a pretty popular guy to grab there in that third round, fourth round area. Um, and with Dak out, I think the potential falls off the table quite a bit for him. Um, as far as like the other receivers on the Cowboys, I mean, I know some people scooped up Michael Gallup late, just in anticipation of him coming back, but um, we'll find out more about the severity of Dak's injury, but I'm not even sure that Michael Gallup's worth a roster spot at this point in time, depending on how long it takes um, Prescott to come back. The one sort of pass catcher that I think this might actually be not necessarily a good thing, but not a horrible thing for is Dalton Schultz. He can kind of come in, and even if Cooper Rush is the quarterback, he can kind of be that safety blanket. He's a guy that sort of reminds you like Jason Witten a couple years ago, where he just always seems to be open. Quarterback can always look at him when the other options aren't there. And Schultz does have some big play potential and tends to score a lot of touchdowns and produce in the red zone too. So I think that's one guy that, if he's on your roster, you don't necessarily feel too bad about this one.
Yeah, I had Gallup in a couple leagues, and this morning was time to part ways when the roster spots need to be opened up for somebody that performed. And going forward, I definitely agree in the pass game. Keeping Schultz, I think he was a great value in the draft this year. Um, Luke, you got Zeke or Pollard. Is it time to panic in that regard?
For Zeke and Pollard, I don't think it's time to panic at all. I mean, the Cowboys are going to have to win somehow, and if they decide to not go get a quarterback, Rush is not going to be able to win games by himself. I mean, if you had the receiver core of last year, maybe with Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb and Schultz and Pollard and like all those people, if you had them still, I would say that Amari Cooper and CD would complement each other pretty well. But with CD being the wide receiver one, he hasn't really seen wide receiver one numbers and targets. And we saw in the first game he had 11 targets, but he had two catches. So I know earlier in CD's career, he couldn't really catch the ball. He was kind of iffy about making those big catches, and we've seen Amari Cooper do that, but he's not there anymore. So I think the only option for the Cowboys to win here is feed Zeke. I mean, Tony Pollard's obviously a great option too, but for them to win games, they're gonna stack the box. Obviously, they're gonna get the box stacked up against them because they know they're going to be running the ball. So hopefully that will open up some opportunity for Tony Pollard in the passing game as well. Um, but yeah, I don't think you panic if you're a Zeke or Pollard owner. If anything, I would still play Zeke because they're just going to run the ball.
Yeah, you could certainly see a scenario where Zeke and Pollard each end up getting 15 plus carries, depending. I think Zeke looked actually pretty good on Sunday night behind a pretty bad offensive line. I think he got almost 6 yards a carry, so he's doing okay back there with not a lot of help. But to me, the biggest question is, can the Cowboys really not pick up a QB here? I mean, it's only week one. We don't know exactly when Dak's going to be able to come back, but I mean, you're talking. Well, everything I've heard has been 6 to 8 weeks or longer. So you run Cooper Rush out there. I guess maybe you steal one or two probably. Just in other parts of the field, your defense, plays well. You're able to run the ball. But like you said, I mean, teams aren't going to let you run when there's no threat of the pass. So you're going to be having 7 guys in the box pretty regularly, and it just doesn't seem to me. I know we heard today that they said they're not going to go get a quarterback, and I understand that, but it doesn't seem to me like the Cowboys are an organization that's going to be willing to just chalk this season up after a week. Um, you know, you're sitting at they're 0-1 now. You go 6 weeks without Dak, you're probably 2-5 maybe. Um, it's going to be tough to come back from that. And another reason to panic is Dak didn't look good when he played. So it's not like you have something to look forward to like last year. I was a big Dak believer at the beginning of last year. I thought he looked like the best quarterback in the league for a couple weeks, and then nobody knows what happened. Guys that seem obvious is Jimmy G in San Francisco. Seems like a guy that could probably plug in pretty well. He gets a bad rap, but he's never really going to lose you a game. He's kind of that Alex Smith type guy. He's not going to put out high output, but he can get the ball to the receivers, orchestrate the run game, or maybe somebody younger like Mason Rudolph. Steelers have 3 quarterbacks on their roster. They're all pretty young, and it seems like Mason Rudolph is, the odd man out. You're looking at probably only having to give up a 3rd-round pick for him. Do you feel better as a fantasy owner if he comes in there instead of Cooper Rush? I think you do. I think he's looked okay in his time with the Steelers. Again, not going to throw for 350 yards, but should be able, if your receivers can create space, which we don't know if CD can do against the number 1 corner yet, but he can probably get the ball there if needed, if the guy's open. I think the biggest cause for panic here is CeeDee Lamb. My formal recommendation is going to be don't do anything until at least this time next week, because we don't know if everything will be the same. You're looking at maybe Monday they pick up Jimmy G, and then all of a sudden your fears are gone. You feel like you're okay. So, but I get people. Somebody texted me yesterday and said, "Can I drop CeeDee Lamb?" I said, "Well, you probably picked him in the 3rd round, so no, you can't." But what options do you have? Like, I'm going to give you guys some guys. Would you trade CeeDee Lamb for Tyler Lockett right now?
No, I wouldn't.
Robert Woods.
Oh,
No, not only seeing one target the whole entire game. I can't give up CD who has wide receiver 1 potential.
How about former teammate Amari Cooper?
I think maybe when Deshaun Watson's back, that's a compelling move, possibly. But with Jacoby Brissett throwing him the ball, there's no way I'm giving up CeeDee Lamb for Amari Cooper.
Yeah, I agree.
Allen Lazard hasn't seen the field yet. Should see targets when he comes back.
I think this is probably the most compelling one so far, just because Allen Lazard is going to be a number 1 receiver, and he has Aaron Rodgers throwing in the ball. Do I think he's on the same level physically and talent-wise as CeeDee Lamb? Obviously not. But the production's probably going to be pretty similar, especially if Rodgers is throwing to Lazard and Cooper Rush is throwing to CD. So I would actually consider this one.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, you look at the quarterbacks, like Aaron Rodgers is top 5 quarterback in the league, where you have Cooper Rush, who's pretty awful from what we've seen. So yeah, CD might be a better receiver, but if you're looking at the target share that Allen Lazard's going to get with all those rookies out in Green Bay that Rodgers still can't really trust, and he's had Lazard for a few years. Even with Devontae playing, he would see targets in the red zone. So I I think it would be a good trade to see if next week, if they don't pick up anybody, I would trade Lazard for CD.
Yeah, and I think this becomes really interesting like Monday or Tuesday after you hopefully we see Lazard on the field this week and get a feel for, if Lazard goes out there, plays the whole game and sees one target, then maybe you back off this one. But um other guys like Christian Kirk, DK Metcalf, seems like those guys are going to be a yes if Lazard is a yes.
Yeah, I'd say that's probably accurate. I mean, the thing for me with receivers is it really comes down to the quarterback, right? Like we've seen guys like Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Ben Roethlisberger, people like that just turned guys that were late round wide receiver picks into all pros. Um, and so for me, like that's the big question, right? Christian Kirk, like I know they gave him a lot of money. I'm still not sold on Trevor Lawrence. Frankly, he looks like he looks very good for long stretches of the game, and then he has like one play where he just like freaks out and forgets how to play football and just throw the football away. So that's a little bit scary to me. And then like I know people are high on Geno Smith right now, but like he's still Geno Smith, and that Seahawks offense is, I mean, they beat the Broncos, but they're not a good team. So I think you worry about like how many points DK can actually put up in that offense. I think Lazard's probably the most compelling option just because for the reasons we already touched on, right? Like he's got Rodgers throwing in the ball. I'm still pretty confident Green Bay is going to be a good team this year. Um, so for me, I think if I had to make a decision right now, though, I'm not trading CD at all. I think if you're a CD owner, the best thing you can do is wait, hope he maybe has a big game this week coming up, and then sell him high. But I don't think there's any reason to sell him low right now.
Yeah, I mean, I feel the same way with Christian Kirk. Like Trevor Lawrence, I guess, like you said, he looks good and then he looks really bad. So Christian Kirk was borderline wide receiver 3 on the Cardinals, mainly wide receiver 2, but um, he didn't really saw. He always saw big targets on the deep pass. So, and you look at someone like DK when he had Russ, he was a downfield threat. He was red zone threat. He was getting those big plays. And from what we saw on Monday, he was kind of just running wide receiver screens, getting those possession catches, like 7 catches for 36 yards. If you're in a PPR league, that's pretty decent. It's like 10 points. But if you're playing in a standard league, I don't think it's very viable to go get DK. And I wouldn't trade CD yet either. But depending on if you're in PPR, DK would be a good candidate if he's just going to get those possession catches and um, let him do the playmaking.
Yeah, DK is one of those guys. It seems like it's been forever since we've seen him make a catch downfield. I mean, I remember games last year when he barely had a point, and it's like that's why he was able to be had so late in the draft. Um, Out of left field here, DeAndre Hopkins for CeeDee Lamb, yes or no?
I mean, yeah, obviously.
He's suspended.
I mean, that's fine, but like the way I think about it is like if Dallas has said they're not going to get a quarterback. Like at this point, I'm probably I don't even know if I'm going to play CD, even if I just stash him until Dak comes back. And like at that point, it becomes a decision of like who do you want to have on the field if you have the option of having them both. And for me, that's DeAndre Hopkins, 100%.
Yeah, I mean, you have someone that's as talented as Hopkins. Like everyone just kind of forgets that he was top 5 receiver every year that he played, and now he's out for he's only out for 6 games. It's not like it's the Deshaun Watson situation where he's out the first 11. He's going to be viable. Kyler can actually learn to throw the ball. Then Hopkins, I'm sure, will be fine, and he has a pretty good wide receiver too in Hollywood Brown, so he's not going to get doubled every single play. But yeah, I would do Hopkins for CD.
And think about how strong Hopkins is going to be from all the steroids when he does come back.
If
Like
you
you
can,
got to think about that
if
too.
you can trade a clean receiver for a roided one, probably should. Probably the second biggest storyline to watch in week one was the New England offense as a whole. I mean, I initially wanted to talk about the New England backfield, but I mean, the whole offense is a train wreck. You had offenses that were expected to be bad, like the Atlanta. They scored like 26 points against the Saints, who have a pretty solid defense. That's a lot more than you were expecting to get from Atlanta. The Browns and the Panthers. Now, maybe the Panthers' defense is to blame, but they both scored 20 plus points. And New England scores 7 points against Miami. Now, Miami's defense isn't bad by any stretch of the imagination, but nobody got going on offense. Probably biggest issue is that Mac Jones is not good. I've watched this guy play football. I know his rookie cards or go for thousands and thousands of dollars, and if you're buying those, I don't know about that one, man. You might want to get Sunday ticket, throw on a Patriots game, and give him the old eye test. It's not pretty. I remember I watched a couple of his games last year, and I can't see it. Their backup is Brian Hoyer, so it doesn't seem like that's going to get any better if they bring in a backup. The O-line is pretty trash. Mac Jones, is about as mobile as a tree. The backfield was the biggest attraction in this year's draft. Every draft, people took Damian Harris and Ramondre Stevenson, and I get it. We saw at the end of the year last year, we saw Damian Harris go nuts. I mean, he had a 30-point game. Then this offseason, the story was that Ramondre Stevenson was supposedly going to take over the backfield. That didn't happen. That didn't even get close to happening. They both looked pretty bad, almost equally bad. Ty Montgomery got carries, got a touchdown, got some receptions. It seems like this offense is everywhere at once and nowhere good if you're a fantasy owner. Wide receivers, Devontae Parker, has top 5 wide receiver potential. We've seen it before, but we didn't see it on Sunday. Jacoby Myers, got some targets. We've seen flashes from him. Same with Kendrick Bourne, had a couple 2-touchdown games, I think, last year. If you guys had to roster anybody from the Patriots offense for the rest of the year, who's it going to be, Caleb?
I think for me, it's probably Jacoby Myers, and I'm holding my nose while I do it. This is a guy who does see a fair amount of volume when he's on the field. He gets targeted a lot. He makes catches. Not a big play threat. I know he had the thing going last year where he had caught like 1 million balls in the NFL and still didn't have a touchdown. Finally broke through that one. So hopefully that's behind him. But yeah, I mean, like you mentioned, there's just not a lot of playmakers on this offense. And I think if, gun to my head, I had to get somebody, it's probably him. But like I said, I'm holding my nose while I do it. And if he's in my starting lineup, things have gone severely downhill for me, and I'm probably just mailing it in for next year.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at running backs, like you said, Damian Harris, Ramondre Stevenson went probably 8th, 9th round in that kind of third wave of running backs. And from last year, what we saw from Damian Harris, he was a good red zone threat. He would get a lot of touchdowns, but then when it came to the rest of the game, it was Stevenson. It was basically a running back by committee. But in my opinion, if you're going to roster anybody, I feel like it's Ramondre Stevenson. I mean, he has the playmaking ability to do something, but they just didn't use him in this game. I mean, you talked about Mac Jones isn't good. I think everyone was so hyped about Mac Jones because he looked average. He looked like he was the best. He looked like he was the most NFL-ready quarterback out of the draft because he played with Nick Saban for, 4 years. So, I mean, he looked average, but now that everyone's seeing him in his second year, he's like, oh, this guy's actually not that good. He can't really throw the ball. He doesn't really have that great of an arm. So I feel like if you're looking at anybody, the O-line's not good, but they're going to need to run the ball because Mac Jones doesn't really have anyone to throw to, and 2, he doesn't really throw well anyway. So I think you just need to get the ball to Ramondre Stevenson and let him do something.
Yeah, Ramondre is a guy that I always think about this when we have these rumors and nobody knows where it came from. where did the rumor that Ramondre was going to take over the backfield come from? I have no idea. It was just on the app like one day in news. Oh, Ramondre is going to be the leader in the backfield. Like, according to who? Like, we don't. Nobody knows where this came from, and that's how guys like Damian Pierce end up being in the fifth round of a fantasy draft. A guy that's never even seen the field and wasn't even drafted high out of college. Um, you know, Sometimes the hype is a little too much, and you gotta see the eye test. But again, there's just not a lot going on, and I could see the Patriots being the team that you are just looking to pick up whoever they're playing on defense. I mean, if they're only going to score 7 points a game, you're going to get a lot of points just based on that alone. If your defense, the defense you're running out there, isn't giving up points, they can't hurt you. I mean, you're getting 7 points or whatever it is just for that, and from there you're in the money. Um, so those were the two biggest storylines we felt like needed touched on from week one. I know we touched on both of those kind of in the episode yesterday, but wanted to. I had a couple people text me, ask me about the Cowboys. What is it time to panic about every Cowboys player that I have? And felt like those were the two biggest things we saw. This in the first week, and again, it's the first week. Cowboys, maybe Tampa Bay's secondary is just god tier this year. You don't know, so give them a chance. Like I said, at least give them till after this week. Let them have a chance for redemption with maybe Cooper Rush goes Mike White mode, and we're all laughing that we were even having this conversation. We'll be back again later this weekend to go over week 2. Everything you need to know. Thursday Night Football preview was yesterday. Until then, anything you guys want to talk about?
Cam Akers.